I'm a 20-year veteran of homeschooling, so I've been at this a long time, and we have done a lot of variety in our learning styles. So some of what we did was, in fact, remote. So I have experience. It wasn't very much like the way that you're doing it now, but parts of it were very similar. So today I'm going to be talking to you about some of the lessons that I learned from it in the hopes that it will also be able to help you. If you give me just a minute, I'm going to share my screen and then we'll be able to look at the same things. So here we are. And the first thing I wanted to say to you is that we homeschoolers see you. This is hard to do. We see you trying to do it all, and we get it. It's hard. As amazed as you often are by all of the mysterious pieces of homeschooling, we are often equally amazed at your ability to do all the things that you do on the timetable that schooled families work with. For us, things are different, but in this time, things are a lot the same for all of us. So, stating the obvious, we have this idea that life is supposed to be balanced. And as chaotic as it was last year and the year before in what we think of as normal, we have a lot of things to cram into what normal is supposed to look like to each and every one of us. So I made a list of things here, right? Into this balance of life, you're trying to work both mom and dad's things, your kids' things. And if you have multiple kids, they have multiple things. And figure out how to balance all of that was not easy to do. And now we've added all kinds of new parameters to what we're supposed to do. And all of those things that we knew about how to make our life balanced have gone by the wayside. I found this cartoon that I particularly liked, and I think that it sort of puts together what I've just been saying. Here is this human, and he's holding all of his regular anxiety in check. He's just got this one thing that he's managing. And then all of a sudden, we're handed this brand new thing. So we have all our old stuff, and now we have this new thing to think and worry about as well. Fast forward quite a number of panels and you get all of these things, so much stuff, right? And you'll see that I edited it and I added that last ball there. It says remote learning because it's really high, it's top of mind for a lot of us, right? So in the past, we had these very normal expectations about what school life looked like. Regular classroom, teacher in the front, no social distancing because we didn't need it. And now things are really different. So whether you're fully remote at home or maybe doing some kind of a hybrid model, now some part of your life looks like this, or maybe it looks like this. And both of those things are normal. So let's talk about some different things that are normal and different things that you can do, some changes that you might be able to be making, and it hopefully will make your life go a little more smoothly. So yeah, these are not normal times. My grandmother was born in 1908. She lived through a pandemic. She was 12 during the last one. And I want to talk a little bit about what is normal in these times. You who are not in a classroom don't necessarily have ideas about what learning looks like during the day. So I wanted to say to you that fidgeting is normal. It's a very real, very normal thing that you do and I do, and every body does it, right? There's actually studies showing that fidgeting improves focus. So what kind of different fidgeting styles are there? And perhaps you'll recognize some of your own in these slides, and perhaps you'll recognize some that your children utilize here. So one of the things is Having busy hands, right? Maybe your kid taps pencils, drums the desk, snaps their fingers. Maybe they're constantly writing over the letters on their worksheets or any number of things, right? If you can provide your kid with a sketch pad off screen, give them a place to use that busy energy, their hands will be in motion, and then their mind can pay closer attention to whatever it is that they're supposed to be doing on the screen. Of course, you want your kid to engage and to be looking at what's on the screen, and that happens naturally, but giving them the tools for their fidgeting often helps to smooth out those feelings and busyness. So I do want to say that with busy hands comes this really great thing. It's called Zen tangling. And one of the things that I like about it is that you are given patterns and you put them together and you can see it's really beautiful. But once you pick a pattern and you can do that together, you just section off pieces of the paper and repeatedly do the pattern. There's nothing to think about in Zen tangling once you've done the plan. So you can just make these circles. Sorry about that. You can make these circles. You can make these lines. You can fill in things. And again, when your hands are busy, for some people, that means that your mind is free. Let's move on to another kind of fidgeting. And one of those can look a lot like the one previously, but it's touching, right? It's the sensations of things. So they're constantly petting the paper in front of them. They might run their hands over their jeans. They might particularly like their sweater that they're wearing, worrying it with their fingers, right? Sliding, pushing, kneading, folding things. And so stress balls are a really great way to utilize that energy, constantly squeezing things. And perhaps you have some of those at your house, or maybe you have some squishy balls or different things. Pulling cotton apart, right, is a really great way to just use your hands, and it feels different, all of these different things. And if you find that a stress ball works today, you might find that it won't work tomorrow because they'll be seeking something different, some different texture. So if you have a variety of balls with different hardnesses, those are great things that you can give them on successive days. Those are things that you can repeat, right? You can come back to that, but having a basket of those things to choose from will often help you and them to have this variety of what's going on for them. So we all know that kid who makes noise, right? They click their tongues, they tap on the things, they drum their fingers. The noise itself is something that works for them. So finding something that makes a noise. One of my kids really particularly liked the top of the Snapple bottle, like the lid. When you press down on it, it makes that like kind of warping noise. Super interesting. Just click this thing. Also, it was something they could do with their hands, pressing, right? It doesn't have to be a Snapple bottle lid, whatever lid you have coming around, but hard bottomed shoes on the floor underneath you, those make a noise. They can make patterns with them. I used to drive my own mother nuts because I used to practice my shuffles and flaps under the table, and it kept me busy, but it was something that I liked to do and I could focus better by doing it. If you have a dog, perhaps you've clicker trained them and you have that little buttony thing that click, 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 clicks. And it's just something to occupy your hand, that little bit of sensation. A maraca, right? You don't want something that's going to be super loud because you don't need to invite the rest of the class into your noise-making children, but something that is soft enough for them to hear and do is perfect in what you might be looking for. So a busy body, this is one, We all know that kid who like wiggles in their chair, they can't sit still, their feet are constantly going. There's actually a lot of really great options for them, all while they're sitting down. I saw a great video where a family had put training wheels onto their small child's bike, and then they made them really tall so that the kid could sit on the bike with the bike under the table, the computer in front, and they'd pedal. And because the training wheels were set at their highest distance, the back wheel couldn't engage in the floor. So it would freely spin, right? And so they would just pedal as they went. Their bodies seemed more still in the screen because you can only see this, So if I were riding a bike, I'd probably move. But your kid that moves around with their busy body is probably doing the same thing. Also, getting a yoga ball chair. They actually make forms. You put your yoga ball in and then you can sit on that. A half ball, like I have this picture of this kid, is a great thing. You can sit down and then your feet actually can bounce on it underneath. Your knees go pretty wildly. You'll want to make sure that your table is tall enough that you're not banging your knees against the table, but it can be a fun thing to press down on. A great thing that I've done myself is those elastic exercise bands. You can tie those to the bottom of your chair so that when you sit on a chair and you rest your heels on the piece of wood that's under there, imagine if instead of that piece of wood, it was this elastic band. And you can then use a variety of densities, right? So maybe you start with one that's particularly dense and they really have to push down on it to make it work. And you can also use one that's really loose and then, it might make noise too. All of these kinds of busy ways to allow your kid to expel that energy is going to be great when they have to be sitting down, right? And again, helping them to get rid of this energy, slough off all of this motion, will help their mind to pay attention to what they're doing. Now, we all know that kid with the busy mouth, right? They're chewing on their pencils, they're rolling their tongue back and forth, clicking, making noise, sound effects, right? The boy, when I was sitting in second grade, I sat next to a boy in school and he made so much noise. Those kids like to have something going on in their mouth, and chewing gum is a really great way to do that. And just the way that I was saying that having a variety of things, right? So different textures, different densities to the balls. Chewing gum is always chewing gum, but it comes in a variety of flavors, right? You can have fruit flavors, mint flavors. Spearmint actually tastes a little different than peppermint, right? Cinnamon gum, all of that stuff, having a variety. If chewing gum works, it's not always going to work, but you can extend the ability of its, the duration by giving them a different flavor, because having a busy mouth and all of that variety is again going to help. Lots of people use hot tea. It again comes in a variety of flavors, and one of the great things about it is that you can control how much sugar goes into it. So hot chocolate's also a really great thing, but if your kid has a lot of sugar and they have some excess energy because of the sugar, that might not work really well for you. But tea, again, you get to choose how much sugar goes in that. And I like the fruity ones, for example, the minty ones. Those herbal teas come in a wide variety of flavors, and that changes it. And having tea, which I have right here, it gives you something to do, something to hold, something to taste. And again, allows you to pay attention because you have this need taken care of. So at the beginning, I said that studies show fidgeting helps you to improve focus, right? Now I'm going to go further to say, I think that your style of fidgeting actually has something to do with your learning style. So for example, if you are a kinesthetic learner, you're probably going to be one of those kinesthetic fidgeters. You're going to need to move while you're stationary. So I thought I might go over a little bit about what learning styles are. Right? This is a slide from my previous presentation with your library, and you might be able to pick yourself out of this grouping, right? Visual learners like to see images, right? They can look at what spatial things are there. Verbal people like words and speech and writing, and your learning style doesn't have to match your kids. But in my experience, it seems to me that this goes into what you do as a fidgeter, right? And so this next slide, I have changed it ever so slightly to give you an example of, if you are a physical kinesthetic learner, probably your type of fidgeting is those busy hands and those busy bodies, turning, twisting, manipulating, kicking things, right? If you're an oral learner, perhaps you like to make patterns with the sounds that you're tapping onto your desk. All of these things go together. And again, if your learning style doesn't match your kids' learning style, which is super common, it's likely that your fidgeting styles also won't match. And so I do want to say to you that you fidget. As you're listening to me now, perhaps you are knitting, for example. That's something that my mom did. That was what she fidgeted in, right? I like to draw, right? So I'll often be just sort of doodling nonsensical things as I'm listening to someone else speak. When my kids were little, I still read to them. We read to each other. But when they were little, I would have them illustrate the books as I was listening. And it really helped them to sit longer because it gave them something to do with what it was they were hearing about. So your fidgeting style, it might not match their fidgeting style, and it doesn't have to. But all of this time that you have been fidgeting, you have been teaching them that you fidget, and it's influencing the way that they will as well. So let's move away from fidgeting and talk about some other things that are going to help with attention and learning. So at school, they have a desk, they sit in the same place, and they look at the same view, the same physical view all year round, usually. In some classrooms, they do move throughout, changing in the season, perhaps. But you don't have to do that at home. And there's a lot of studies that say that changing your view helps you to process information in a new way because there's new input coming in. So you can start off in the kitchen and then move to the dining room or the living room. You don't have to be in the same place all the time. And perhaps that doesn't work out for you, but even if you move yourself from one side of the table to the other, you'll change your view, and that will make things more visually interesting. Windows are always great because then you can look out them and the world changes. The wintertime looks different than the fall does now. So putting up art and a brag wall, this is a thing that they do at school to make the physical things different, right? Everyone gets their things displayed, and that's great for self-esteem, but it also changes what they're looking at. Schools change those things naturally. They can't change where the walls are, but they can change what's up on the walls. And they do because it brings more interest. And you can do that as well, right? And I also encourage you to put up your art and not just theirs. Do some things that incorporate and add to what's there. It'll bring part of you up, and it will also give you something to share. Now, again, changing your physical parameters may not be something that you can do easily, but if you can't change the landscape, you can change the soundscape. There are lots of studies that show that ambient noise, background noise is helpful to learning new things. Now, obviously, you're going to have different styles and different desires about what musically you'd like to listen to, and that's great, right? I suggest that you listen to things that don't have words because those can be really distracting. I will tell you that some of the studies show that the more complicated the music is, the better it is for your brain. So jazz, honestly, is one of the best things that you can put on as background noise. If you're looking for any kind of suggestions there, I particularly like 1920s to 1960s jazz. It's complicated, it's different, it has a pattern to it, and it's super fun. So, sitting down all day doing all of this stuff, it can cause a lot of irritability, right? We all get cranky when we have a long list of things that we have to do and there's not a lot of flexibility. But I really would counsel you to consider the source. Why is your kid irritable? Are they hungry? Lots of kids get hangry. I shouldn't say kids. I get hangry too, and perhaps you do, right? But when you've emptied your tank of fuel, you get irritable. Maybe having a snack, maybe scheduling a snack at a different time in the day will help to get you through that hump, right? Have they been sitting too long? Kids are designed to move, and sitting still for too long can just make you kind of cranky. Just even taking a moment to stand as big as you can instead of sitting small in front of your screen, just taking a few minutes to do that can really make a difference. There's also some studies that show that really standing as big as you can, opening your chest, extending your arms and your legs, standing as wide as you can, really helps you build confidence. It helps to release some endorphins, and we'll talk about them in a little bit too. But it's a great way to just change the shape of your body because we're not designed to just sit still. Now, I've also put lonely on this screen. Some of us are more social than others, and I do want to give a shout out to those extroverts. They are used to having lots of input, not just with stuff, because we have stuff at home too, but other people's voices and other people's thoughts included in what they are doing. They are social creatures. We are social creatures. And so taking a break and allowing them to goof off with friends via Zoom or over the fence in your backyard, however that works, whatever your level of safety and concerns are, we do need to have socialization. And that can be with their grandparents on the phone. It doesn't need to be with the same age. It needs to be just making connections, right? We learn best, we human at our best when all of our needs are met. And so I wanted to show you this next slide. This is something in psychology that's called Maslow's Pyramid of Needs. Maslow was a psychologist, and basically the theory goes that you have different levels of needs, these physiological needs, right? Do you have clean air, clean water? Do you have enough food, shelter, and so on? When those things are met, we go up to the next level, the next echelon, right? Is your personal security met? Do you have employment, right? Are you useful and purposeful, right? Moving up, love and belonging leads to self-esteem, leads to self-actualization, which sounds great, right? In this context, I think that there's a couple of things that we're straddling in the pandemic. And so I've sort of put these on the side here, and I've tried to line them up so that, do you feel safe? Not every person does, not every kid does if they don't understand how things are working. And it's easy to think of our children as not understanding the intricacies of this complexity that we're living through, but they really understand probably more than we know. And so your feelings here are really going to be mirrored in their behaviors. If you don't feel safe, they won't feel safe. So taking some time to help them feel and understand the safety of what is around them is really important. Straddling their safety of needs and love and belonging is whether or not they feel like they have a purpose. A lot of kids go to school and feel like that is their job on some level. The job of childhood is to learn, to grow, right? And everyone's is to love and grow, but we grown-ups go to work, we have a paycheck, we have expectations about how things are going, and your kids' expectations are completely different now. Do they have a sense of purpose in what it is that they're doing? When you feel good about your love and your growing, you tend to feel like you have this purpose. Now, straddling that love and belonging with self-esteem is, do they belong with, right? Do they belong to? Now, belonging with is a really great thing to have, and we get that from our community at large. And kids often get that at school, with the soccer team, wherever their community lies. And in the pandemic, it's hard to have that same level of community. What do your kids feel like they belong with? This is a really great question and something that I encourage you to explore with them. If they're feeling lack of connection, there are ways that you can help them to feel connected. It's not going to be the same. It's not the same for any of us. But getting up higher on this pyramid of needs really helps people to feel more centered and able to handle your day to day. I'm going to move on again because it's really important for us as humans to take a break. And there are very likely breaks built in to your child's day. No matter how old they are, they're doing one thing, and then there's time in between before they do something else. Sometimes those breaks are really short, and sometimes they're a little bit longer. Using them wisely can really help you to make your days more patternful, to be more fulfilled, and to have some of these things that we've been talking about. So for example, you can have a snack. Again, fulfilling that need, getting over that hump of hunger can really be helpful in a space that you need it to be. Going outside is a tremendous way to take a break. No matter how cold it is, you can get outside. Getting some sunshine really does help flip any kind of bad mood you might be having. It's a really great way. I often think about it as crossing a threshold into something new. Every time you cross a threshold, you have the ability of finding a new piece, and intellectually, emotionally, you can have that simply by going outside. Stretching, I talked a little bit about this, taking a moment. It's awesome when you can do that stretching outside, but again, just extending your body into different shapes really does help get out of those clogged up spaces that you might be in intellectually, physically, emotionally. And lastly, I do want to say, it's really important for everyone to have time to talk to your friends, to goof off, be silly, wiggle around with. So if your kid has a best friend, set aside, see if you have even 15 minutes just to do something that is not serious. There are some physical considerations that I want to broach. One of them is that eye strain is a real problem, not just for adults, but for kids too. When your life is on the screen, the distance between you and what you're looking at is the same all of the time. And as humans, and especially as kids who are moving through the world so much, we're used to looking far and looking close and having that change all of the time. When you're working on something and you're looking down at the paper and then you're looking out at your teacher at school, for example, all takes muscles to do. And we get a lot of exercise that way. But when we're looking at the screen, there isn't any depth of difference for this. And that can make those muscles in your eyes tighten up, right? You don't get that kind of exercise. And when those things tighten up, you can have headaches, which can cause irritability, especially if your kid is little. They might not understand that the symptoms they're feeling are a headache because they've never experienced one before. So they might not say to you the same kinds of words that you would use when describing a headache. So things that you can do that will help that is to move the screen further and closer to you at different spaces in the day. Just having those muscles have to move so that you're focusing at different spaces will help. Also, the level of brightness on your screen, you're in control of that and you can change those things. That will help. Some people get colored glasses. Some people, there are screens for your screen and it can take the edge off so that if the light coming from your screen is particularly bright and blue, it might alter it to be warmer. Right? And also taking some time to put things in your environment so that you can look at different distances. It's also really important for us to keep our face in one space and look around. Those are muscles that we don't use when we're just looking at the screen. Next, I want to talk about posture. It is a thing that my grandmother she was hard on me, constantly telling me to sit up straight. And perhaps you had someone in your life for whom that was also true. I just saw Andrea just sit up straight as if her grandmother just told her that she should do that. Grandma was right. Sitting up straight is really important. And a lot of our time in the modern era is on our phones, right? And your head leans forward. Your adult head weighs about 10 pounds. A small child's head might weigh half of that, but it's not uncommon for a kid's head to be 6 pounds or more. When you're sitting in front of your computer, hunched over, your head in front of your shoulders, the muscles in the back of your neck have to hold all of that weight up, right? So simply by changing your posture, by letting your bones handle the weight of your head, makes a difference. And so one of the best things you can do is to put their screen on a pile of books so that the screen is eye level with them. And so if you're lucky enough that your screen can be separated from your keyboard, that's really great, because then your keyboard can be at an easy space for you in the height that's most comfortable. But the thing that you're looking at can be up higher. When it's higher, you sit higher, and then your head will be on the space that it belongs, right? 10 pounds is a lot of weight to hold, and letting your skeleton hold that space is way more comfortable. So think about how we sit in our space. Lots of kids slump in bed, right? They slump on the couch and they slump at the table when you're sitting over. Andrea's also like leaning over, right? In that case, at least your hand is holding up your head, right? But it's really terrific to just moving the computer itself, making it higher, will naturally lead them towards better posture. Now, I don't want to knock sitting on the couch or laying in bed or even laying on the ground, right? Having your body be in those different shapes is still really important. Variety is important, but spending too much time with your head over really does cause that muscle strain, and again leads to headaches, muscle aches, irritability, and crankiness. And if those are the problems that we're trying to solve, posture will really help. Oh, there, I forgot that I included a picture of someone schmumping. So another thing that you can do for yourself or your kid is to utilize a standing desk, just raising the computer up. This is also really great for your kid who has those busy feet and those busy toes, gives them something to do. So if this is an option for you, that would be great. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about those happiness chemicals, and everyone has different ways of sort of stoking the fire of their happiness things. So one, for example, is dopamine. This is your brain's rewards, right? Now, a lot of people get, I'm sorry, a lot of people, they get some actual thrill from making a list. I get a thrill from checking it off, right? Just honestly making the list and being able to check off that I have done it gives me a little surge of pleasure. And that's true for a lot of people. And that's because it gives us a little bit of dopamine, right? That I will confess that there are times that I know I need it, and I putting my laundry in the washer and then moving it to the dryer separately, just so I can take them off twice, right? I think we all do that for ourselves, and letting your kids enjoy the pleasure of checking things off the list sometimes really works well, right? Also, celebrating the little wins, not saying, yeah, okay, but now what, right? Letting us take pleasure in those half steps. Yay! I remembered to put the stuff in the dryer today. I deserve a cookie. Some days I do in fact deserve a cookie for just the little things. And we treat ourselves that way because we understand that that's important for us. It's equally important for them. They figured out how to do half of the problem. They're worried about not knowing how to do the next step. That's okay. You figured this out, right? Have a cookie. It might not be a cookie, but it might be a sticker. It might be a minute or two of doing something that they have a limit on. Whatever it is, have a treat. It makes us feel good. So serotonin, right? It helps you to feel like you're on an even keel. And there's a lot of ways to help your body to produce this. And some of them we've already talked about. Getting outside really does help you. Fresh air, sunshine, moving around in the space. Hiking is a really great thing for you to do. Here's a picture of my girls meditating. They saw me doing it, and they decided that they would learn themselves. And my older daughter, especially, she's an introvert, and she really found that it was helpful to her. When things got chaotic and crazy, she would find a minute or two to have space inside herself so that she could then have space outside of herself, so that she could inhabit that space outside of herself. Kids as young as 4 and 6 can meditate. It's not going to look like the way that you do, or maybe it might look better depending on what your meditation practice is. But it really is a great tool. I want to lead into exercising from there, because the exercising that this is suggesting that you do, this is the kind of exercise that is highly repetitive. So this isn't running with your friend, right? This isn't swimming and talking. This isn't going for a joyride cycling. This is that space that you get to when you're running, and you stop thinking about everything. It is a meditation in and of itself. And if you don't meditate well, I might suggest that if you are a runner or a cycler, that perhaps that is where your meditation is. And getting into that space where you cease to think, cease to worry, that is a great way to help your serotonin be produced. Oop, sorry, I double clicked on that. And so I am going to escape out of here so that I can come back to this. Thank you for that. So endorphins, we're often talking about endorphins and how great they are. They renew and exhilarate us. They help us to feel more connected in a lot of ways. And taking a laughter break is a great way to do that. Take a couple of minutes to share a joke, watch a funny video. Moms, we all know that dark chocolate is a somewhat heal-all, right? It's the panacea of things, dark chocolate. That's because it helps you to release endorphins. It works. Small doses though, right? So here is exercise that is with someone else, right? You're playing tennis, you feel the surge of, competition, of connection, this back and forth, this moving of your body in fun and interesting ways. Dancing is a great way to release endorphins. Jump around like chickens in your kitchen, right? Whatever it happens to be, just blowing off some steam and wiggling around and enjoying it is a really great way for you to really release some great endorphins. Oh, and now it's not going. There we go. Oxytocin. We have, most of us, birthed humans and perhaps are familiar with this idea of oxytocin. It's a chemical that helps us to feel loved, supported, and in connection with that which is outside of us. And so playing with your baby brother, playing with your dog, hugs, both giving and receiving them is a great way to release oxytocin. Also, giving and getting compliments, right? Telling your kids what they're doing right is a great way to release oxytocin inside you and them. And it helps you to feel more connected. Just having a practice of telling people what they're doing right really helps them to hear what's going wrong, right? Knowing what your constructive criticism is a fabulous thing, but knowing what to keep, what you're doing right, often makes us feel more secure and gives us greater ability to change what we're doing wrong. So these are the pieces that I really wanted to touch on today for everyone. And I want to give you the opportunity to give me some very specific ideas about what's happening in your households with your kids and your family. And so I wanted to say, please write in the chat box, or if you feel comfortable raising your hand and asking me in person, as it were, I'd be happy for that to happen. I do want to remind you, though, that we are recording this. So for now, if you decide to speak, then you will be recorded as well. I'm going to stop my share for just a moment so that we can see each other's faces, as it were. And really, if any of you have some ideas about what you'd like to ask, I would love to hear them. I know I did a lot of talking. So I do want to say, while we're waiting, if anyone has any questions, that life now is very different from your kid. And I have been hearing lots of stories about families who are worried because their kids have a sort of failure to thrive in this environment, right? It's really different. And I've tried to cover some reasons that their lives are different and some ways that you might be able to help them. The older your kid is, oftentimes the less verbal they'll get about what is bothering them. So getting to the root cause of the problem can be the hard part, right? There's some kind of sweet spot, and it's different for every kid. So with your young kids, they don't have the words to tell you what the problem is, and your older kids, they have the words, but they're not necessarily willing to share those things. Being vulnerable takes practice. And I do want to say that the more vulnerable and open you are, the more vulnerable and open they are more likely to be. I saw a brief flash of a comment, and I just want to say that it had Star Wars sword fighting and noodles in it. And that's all I caught while I was talking. Oh, you're still muted, Andrea.
Oh, it just doesn't want to stay unmuted. How strange. Claudia shared that her children will sword fight with lightsabers made from pool noodles, and that she highly recommends that.
Yeah.
That's to me like a great way to blow off some steam in the middle of the day. You're getting a little bit of exercise.
Some laughter, right? Lots of movement. Yeah, that's an awesome way to have it happen, right? I think that might be a slight advantage that you families who have more than one kid have, right? Because then they can occupy each other. It's a whole lot harder when you have just one only kid. You know, who are they talking to? Who are they battling with pool noodles? I love that image, Claudia. You know, anything that's Star Wars related, I am all for, honestly. We're fans in my house. Though I do want to give equal time to Star Trek because we're also really into science fiction fantasy across the media as it goes. So yeah, does anybody have any things that they do with their only kids that's a great way to blow off steam? Maybe you like to fight with pool noodles and make sound effects like lightsabers. I don't know. While we're waiting on that one, I'll go back and say that it's really easy for us to get caught up in the have-tos of what life is like right now. And so looking at your want-tos and your get-tos can be great ways to start and or end your day. What do you get to do today? What are you looking forward to? You know, I think that a lot of us, because of the general landscape of our lives, have our nose to the grindstone and we're thinking about things as if we have to. What do I have to do today? And having some space where you get to do things, changing that little bit can often remind you throughout the day that there's something to look forward to. And those things really help us in general. And seeing another one. Andrea is reading and still muted.
I just keep myself unmuted until my son comes home. The question is that, let's see, my son finishes his work quickly, then goes straight to playing games. And mom's tried to get him to do constructive things, but other than having to watch him like a hawk, what else can she do?
Great question. You know, I'm going to fall back on my homeschooling here. So I'm pointing out my biases, right? There's a lot to learn from games. Some games are really important to figure out logic, right? To having support for working with community. Games are a great way to learn, and children learn really well through play. They not only express them, but they can set up scenarios that help them to figure out right versus wrong. You know, kids, like I'll fall back when I was growing up, right? We might have played, let's go with Star Wars, right? And somebody plays the light side and somebody plays the dark side. And through that repetition, you figure out what is right and what is wrong and how you feel about those scenarios. By doing them over and over again, you can figure out the pattern by which you want to live your life. And I know that that sounds philosophical, but I think it's also true. We're not born, I think, knowing the difference between right and wrong. We have to figure it out along the way. And play is where kids do that. Reading is where kids do that. When you read a book, you get to follow someone else's thoughts and feelings. You learn empathy for what they do. It's a great way to learn stuff. And so if your kid is playing and they're getting something out of it, I think it's okay to let them do those things. Again, variety, right? I've been saying a lot of variety in your life. I would lead them towards doing different kinds of things. Maybe they might like to try a puzzle. That's a great way to learn to take just separate pieces and put them together. It's a good way to construct how you will bring different thoughts and put them together for yourself. There's a lot of different ways to think about learning. Legos are a great way to follow directions, and that's going to really be great for them when they get to high school and they're having to follow the directions in chemistry class. Think about what it is they're wanting to do and what that will help them with, and then help them to broaden and bring in more variety in their day, says the homeschooler. I could talk about this stuff a lot because I love learning theory. I do a lot of reading. As you might have noticed, I for fun, look at different studies and can talk to you about all those different pieces. The truth is that learning at school, it has to be a certain way because there's 20 kids or more in a classroom, right? And when you have that many short people and one person in charge, there's a lot of rules around the way that it works. But when learning takes up less time and when there are fewer little people, there can be more specific rules. And so there's more flexibility. Your learning environment doesn't have to look the same as your neighbors or the way that it does in school. And that's okay. And I'm not bad mouthing school. School is great at a lot of things. Homeschooling is great at a lot of things. Remote learning is great at a lot of things. But we need to sometimes let go of what those ideas of what it has to be so that we can allow it to be what it is. Remote learning isn't going to be like school, with the exception perhaps that there are similar types of assignments, but the amount of time it takes will be different. The amount of interaction will be different. But that also means that the amount of distraction will be different. There's a lot of pros and there are some cons to all of these different choices. And you get to explore what those things are for your family. So everybody who's here listening to this talk tonight, you're going to have some things in common and some of them you aren't. You're going to be an individual in those things. If you have multiple children, some of it will be easy for one and difficult for the other. They're not going to match because they don't match. You know, they're different. I've talked to a family, they have twins, and each one is good at different things, as you would expect, right? They're different people. So even though they have the same work, they're having different achievements and different struggles with it. It's very natural.
Does anyone have any other questions?
The questions are my favorite part.
Okay. Well, I guess if we don't have any more questions, Linda, did you have anything that you wanted to add or?
Sure, I just wanted to share my screen so that I could give you my contact information in case anybody would like that. I'm sorry, I have to push this button over here. They moved it. So here I am. I do consulting. Please feel free to revisit this recording that Andrea is going to put up on your YouTube channel. But if you have any other comments or questions you would like to get in contact with me, there's my name and my email address on the screen. I'm happy to work with groups. I'm also happy to work on a one-to-one basis. So thank you very much for having me tonight. I enjoyed visiting with you. I really liked the pool noodle comment, Claudia. I may highlight you in the future. Oops, there's my full cartoon. There we go.
Well, thank you very much, Linda, for giving us this presentation. I myself am a visual learner and thus have many a doodle on my notepad. But I feel like I got a lot of tips and tricks there. So hopefully everybody got a little something to help them with their remote learners. So have a wonderful evening, everybody. And thank you for coming.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Everybody.
I like to be last just in case you wanted to say anything.
Too. I agree.
All right, well, I don't have anything else to add.
Okay, me neither. That was wonderful. Thank you so much for doing that for us.
You're very welcome. And if you like have any thoughts about it and you want to email me afterwards, I would,